The do now is step number one. It's a link to a Canvas quiz. It's just 4 questions. Looks like this. They're all multiple choice. This is open notes, so feel free to refer to notes that you took from the reading or anything else you might have written down. And I'll give us about 8 minutes to complete this. Hopefully it won't take that long. I'll just keep an eye on completion, and then we'll come back together to review it. So I'll be here listening if something doesn't work or if you can't figure something out. Otherwise, we'll check in a little bit. Go for it. All right, looks like everyone has submitted answers, so let's come back together. How we feel on that quiz? Pretty good. Let's take a look at Canvas's instant analysis. This is up to date now. So first question, satellite in elliptical orbit travels around Earth fastest when it moves. Correct answer was close to Earth, which most of you got. Think of it again as sort of slingshotting around, right? It goes really fast around its center of orbit, and then it's thrown out into space and kind of slowly makes its way back towards it. Satellite in Earth's orbit does not experience any drag or friction. That was kind of the giveaway in the question. It is above the atmosphere. Technically, it's not outside of Earth's gravitational field because that means it would have escape velocity and it would leave. So it's in orbit, so that means it's within the gravitational field. So I could see how the last two are tempting, but it is the atmosphere that is slowing things down. With minimum speed, what minimum speed do you need for escape velocity? Basically, is what this is asking. And yes, it is 11.2 kilometers per second. You could either have that written down or look it up. And remember what the other numbers are. So 8 kilometers per second is circular orbit. What was a little bit more than 8 kilometers per second? What type of orbit are you going to achieve then?
Elliptical?
Yep, that's where it's not quite circular. And anyone remember what 42.5 kilometers per second was?
Escape velocity for the sun if on Earth.
Yes, so that'll send you out of the solar system. And when you toss a projectile sideways, it'll curve or fall around the Earth if it matches the Earth's surface curvature. However, this is also sort of an oversimplified question. What else do we have to assume is true about where that projectile is flying? If it's really going to go into orbit around Earth, what does it have to be outside of or away from?
Stuff like mountains or like
atmosphere.
Yeah, so all the stuff that could get in the way. So yes, like Lila said, mountains, trees, all that stuff, and very good Milena atmosphere, right? We don't want drag from air or anything like that because that'll just slow it down and then it won't technically be in orbit anymore. It'll slow down enough that it won't match Earth's curvature anymore. So great. Okay, good that you seem to be feeling good on the last part of chapter 5. So what I want to touch on was Rube Goldberg. I haven't watched all the videos yet, but the ones that I watched were awesome. A lot of you had some very creative uses for different things you had in your house. Strongly encourage you, if you have not done so already, to go watch each other's videos. It looks like from the view counts, it looks like you have been doing that. And so the goal this week is to start thinking about what your final machine is going to look like. And specifically, you'll go back to the description of project, and there were 8 options that we gave you, sort of 8 required tasks. You have to choose 4 of them. And I know I surveyed you earlier about this, but now I would like you to sort of make up your mind about what 4 tasks you want your final machine to do, and then start to think about what you have at home that you can use to do these things. And you'll have a little quiz for homework that you'll complete to do that. But what I want to move on to now, again, is just a little topic that I find interesting. Again, I'm more of a biologist, and so I wanted to look at the biology behind projectiles and the fact that humans are very good at throwing them. So I've got a question that I want to pose to you right now, and that is, using Poll Everywhere, if you can see the question up here on top, why are humans so good at throwing? This is one of our sort of interesting biological features, that we are very good at hitting targets with projectiles. And so I know you probably don't have any background knowledge about this, but just take your best guess, reason through this. You can think about it, for a minute or so if you want, but then go ahead and type your response to pollev.com/hatesci2 as instructed on the screen. And again, there's 12 of us in the class, so we'll try to wait till we get to about 10 responses, and then we'll start looking at what you were submitting. So Think about it. Take your best guess. All right, I'm going to start reviewing what people have answered. So go ahead and read over these responses as they appear on the screen, and we'll discuss them. All right, I'm liking some of these. So look at that. Monkeys throw feces. Is that an accurate description? Do monkeys do that? Anyone know?
I think they do sometimes.
They throw their poop around. And I'm sure there's a reason behind it. It's probably territorial or a scent thing or something. But anyway, I'm liking some of these. So a lot of you are referring to strength, right? That we are strong. And so we're able to throw things really well. And you also mentioned our ancestors. Does anyone know strength wise, like compared, like between like a human and a chimpanzee or a human and a gorilla, which animals are stronger?
The monkeys.
Yes, right. Or technically,
Yeah, they're jacked.
the apes. Yep, chimpanzees and gorillas are much stronger than we are. Are they good at throwing things?
Not really. They can't throw very far.
Nope. Again, we're able to keep them in zoos perfectly fine, right? You're not worried about a gorilla picking up a rock and throwing it through the glass in its zoo enclosure, right? They don't do that. And so it's definitely sort of a learned behavior thing for sure. They're definitely more foragers, right? Which we used to be as well. But a lot of you say too that some of you mentioned evolution, right? That we've evolved to survive better, enhancing certain traits. So how would being good at throwing things help us in terms of our survival and evolution? Why is throwing a good skill there? What do you think yeah. Well, how does throwing help you with hunting? How would we use it for hunting?
With like spears or rocks, like
Yeah.
whatever we used.
So think about it, especially in terms of being a meat eater. Rather than having to go into like hand-to-hand combat with an animal, being able to kill it from a distance, or at least harass it or scare it, like somewhere else, like over a cliff or something that would easily kill it, huge advantage, right? And so our ancestors, most likely, they think it's a species called Homo erectus, which were the first ones to really walk upright, start using tools. Were the ones who started to do this. And if you think of about it from an evolutionary standpoint, I know we haven't touched on evolution yet, but I think you're somewhat familiar with it. But if you've got organisms that are hunting, right, by throwing spears and things like that, they're going to be eating more food, right? They're eating a lot more meat, especially. They're going to be healthier, which means anyone want to guess what they're going to be doing more than other individuals? If you're healthy and you're eating a lot, what's the other thing you're going to do that allows you to pass your genes on?
Reproduce.
Yeah, they were reproducing more, and they had those kind of slightly larger brains. Plus, they're getting more food to then provide energy to their brain development and use. And here we are now with our very advanced tool usage. But a lot of you get too that our anatomy really helps us out, right? Having be able to grip things, having an elbow and shoulder that can rotate really easily. But none of those features actually evolved for throwing. Does anyone know why we have opposable thumbs and why we have shoulders that rotate and elbows that bend? What was that for? What were our ancestors doing, or specifically, where were they living?
In the forest.
Trees.
Yeah, right. We were tree dwellers. We're very good. We were evolved from tree climbers. And it's one of these interesting things that I don't know this for sure, but I think it's one of these sort of added benefits that our anatomy is evolved for climbing, right? That's why we have wrists that rotate and gripping hands. But those features also allowed us to then pick up and throw projectiles really well. And it's one of these things where if you think about feathers too, a lot of people don't realize feathers most likely evolved for warmth first. Feathers are very good at insulation and keeping an organism warm. And flight and flying with feathers was sort of just an additional benefit. It's something that came later. And so I think of this in a similar light, that we evolved to climb, but as we upright walkers left the trees, started walking around, being able to hold a projectile and throw something like a spear while standing on two legs was made possible by the fact that we had these elbow joints and shoulder and gripping. So we're going to explore this now a little bit more, watching a Edpuzzle video. In fact, there are people who have done entire postdoctoral research projects on the evolution of human throwing. And so that's the next task down. There's a link to an Edpuzzle video. It's Sci2H, How Throwing Made Us Human. If you can't get the Edpuzzle to work, I know some of you, sometimes Edpuzzle like freezes on the first question, then I just have a link to the video itself. The video is just over 4 minutes long. The Edpuzzle has about 4 questions to it, so go ahead and work on that. I'll give us probably about 9 minutes to work through this, and then we'll come back to review it. So again, I'll be here listening if you've got questions, you can't get something to work, but otherwise work on the Edpuzzle, and in 9 minutes we will reconvene. Go for it. All right, kiddos. Looks like a majority of you have submitted your answers, so let's come back together. What'd you think? Was this in line with most of the ideas we saw, some of the answers presented for that poll everywhere question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were. And again, he hits at the fact that, so first question was about, chimpanzees are way stronger than humans. And if anyone watched that Tiger King series on Netflix, right, there are some people who have like pet chimpanzees at home. Can chimpanzees be dangerous pets? Yeah, they could rip your arm out.
Yeah.
Purely by accident, right? That's how strong they are. And so, but despite all that strength, are they as good at throwing as we are? Not even close, right? They can throw with about a third of the force or a third of the accuracy. And again, it sort of comes down to anatomy. It's sort of the way that we have evolved, the way our shoulders kind of connect, the way our shoulder blades are positioned, that we're much better at throwing projectiles. So what is it about our anatomy? How do our muscles and tendons help us with this? What does he equate them to?
He said like the elastic bands on a slingshot, like because your tendons can like store energy.
Yeah. Anyone ever seen those still photos of pitchers mid swing, like mid throw? What do you notice about their arm? It's kind of gross, right? Anyone look? It's like all like it looks like it's broken. But it's exactly what he makes it sound like. It's almost like it's like those little dog toys where you throw the ball with, that it's basically at that point a sling, right, that's holding onto the ball. It's going to release it. Your muscles are literally like rubber bands, but you have to imagine that there's millions of them, right? Because one little rubber band doesn't do all that much, but if you got a couple 100,000 all working together, all attached to the same spot, that's what your muscle fibers are like. And so they're able to pull back and then exert a ton of force. However, I mean, if you think about a baseball pitcher or the quarterback on a football team, what isn't natural about that throwing? Like how is that throwing different from what our ancestors were doing?
We do it like hundreds of times in a very short period of time, and our ancestors probably didn't do it nearly as much and only did it for food.
Yes, hopefully they were not launching a spear into some poor animal 100 times in a very short period of time, unless they were very sick, right? And in something like baseball, right, the pitcher is not trying to kill and eat the batter, though that would be an interesting game to watch. But the point is, it's part of the game. So yeah, we get a lot more injuries, right? If you look at baseball pitchers in particular, it's not surprising that they have a ton of shoulder and elbow injuries because they are really abusing this ability, right? They're throwing a lot. They're throwing way more powerfully than our ancestors probably ever did. So it's cool that we can do these things, but again, we're almost in sports, we're pushing it to the limit. It's kind of interesting to think about. And obviously our ancestors weren't throwing baseballs and footballs. What were they throwing?
Spears or rocks or sticks.
Mm-hmm. So, and again, it's weird to think, but somewhere on the evolutionary line, there was some pivotal moment where one of our ancestors picked up a sharpened stick and was like, hey, I could probably hit an animal with this thing, and either an animal or a fish. And literally history was made from that point forward. So kind of a cool ability. And I like that idea that even though, yes, we can see that baseball pitchers and, good quarterbacks on football teams are very good at throwing things, but you have to understand that that's true for all of you, right? All of you have, in terms of the animal kingdom, we have an incredible sense of direction and ability to hit things. And so the story that I always tell is, again, I was in the Peace Corps. I lived in West Africa for 3 years in a rural village. And one of my side projects was I had a garden going in my compound. My host father gave me a little plot where I could garden. And I got some garden beds going, and I found some fertilizer, fertilized the beds. I was like super proud of myself. But we had chickens in the compound. And does anyone know what chickens like to do when they're looking for food?
Dig up the dirt.
Yeah, they scratch, right? And they scratch and look for bugs. And so these chickens got into my garden beds and they scratched all of the fertilizer out of the bed and onto like the sides, where it's totally useless. So this is really frustrating. I put it back on. I built a whole fence around my garden, and yet I come back the next day and the chickens have just jumped and flown over the fence. And I got so mad. I chased them out. They were in a little kind of fenced area, and I picked up a rock and I was like, I'm going to scare them. There was a chicken running along the fence, and I threw the rock, and my brain just kind of timed it, right? I threw ahead of the chicken where the chicken wasn't there yet, and the chicken then ran, and I nailed this thing in the head with a rock. And it flopped on the ground, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. And the added thing is that, my host family wants to eat these chickens, but they were Muslims. It was a Muslim family. Muslims won't eat meat unless it's been ritually killed, right? They have a way of you have to kiss the knife and do this whole thing. And so I'm running to find my host father, get a knife. We got to take care of this thing because I didn't want it to go to waste. But luckily when we came back, the chicken had gotten up and was walking around again. So it was probably concussed. Was probably not a good experience with the chicken, but it was interesting that in that moment, I wasn't a baseball player in high school. I have never practiced throwing things. And yet in that moment of anger, I very accurately hit a fast-moving animal from a distance. And so, anyway, you have an innate ability when you need it. Anyway, chicken was okay. So I do not enjoy abusing animals. I never threw a rock at an animal after that. So, all right. Next thing that I want to work on is, we talked about this. So let's do an activity now, where this activity we're going to do today isn't so much looking at the accuracy of throws, more how the angle of our throw can maximize the horizontal distance, right? And if you think about baseball and things like that, this is a key feature of that, and also when we're hunting. So we're on step 4 in the activity in the tasks list for today. And I'm just going to let you work through this on your own, and probably give us about 20 minutes to get through it, maybe even more than that, right? I want to meet back here at least 9:30. And it is now, all right, that gives us about 15 minutes actually. So that'll work out fine. So we're going to take the next 15 minutes just to work through this. The gist of it is that you're going to be either indoors or outdoors throwing a projectile at 3 different angles. You're going to throw a projectile forward at 15 degrees, 45 degrees, and 75 degrees. And I've got instructional videos here for both outdoor and indoor. You just need 3 of the same projectile. So 3 tennis balls or 3 balled up socks, or I make a couple of suggestions about things you can use. Please be safe, right? Do not hurt your arm, your shoulder, anything like that. Make sure you're not going to hit anyone or hit a car if you're outside, or break something inside. But take some time to watch those videos and plan it out. And you know what? I'll actually give you about 20 minutes to do this, because there's 2 things you need to do. There's a Canvas quiz, U4L16, how far can you throw? There's about 6 questions that you need to answer. One of which, the first one is a prediction. So you should start there about which one do you think will go the farthest if you throw it 15, 45, or 75 degrees. And then there's also a Flipgrid video. I'd like you to film yourself just doing 1 round. That's all you need to do. So just 1 set of throws that you need to film. But since it's an experiment, you'll be doing 3 sets there. So again, that's enough from me. All the instructions and videos and everything are there. So just read through everything for step 4 and complete the quiz and the Flipgrid video post. I'm going to time this for 20 minutes. I will be here listening if you're confused or if you can't figure something out, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll check in 20 minutes. Go for it. All right, kiddos, that's been 20 minutes. Let's come back together. Looks like about 10 of you were able to get the Flipgrid videos posted, and about 9 of you finished or at least submitted your responses to the quizzes. So for those of you who weren't able to finish, this will just roll over into homework. If Flipgrid isn't working for you for some reason or something, you can also just email me the video. I know some of you have trouble like uploading or like stops or gets blank or something, so just let me know. But so be honest, how many of you, like, what was your prediction? Which angle did you think was going to give you the most horizontal velocity?
45.
45.
45? Anyone guess anything different?
I said 15.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about 15 at first too, just when you think about throwing it as hard as you can. And again, the image that always comes to my mind is baseball pitchers, right? Are baseball pitchers throwing at a 45-degree angle?
No.
No, but baseball pitchers aren't trying to reach distance, right? What are they trying to maximize?
Accuracy.
Yeah, accuracy and speed, right? And so they're actually usually throwing at a downward angle, as far as I know. The pitcher's mount's actually a little bit higher up than where the batter is. So in your experimentation, what did you find? Did 45 actually give you the longest distance? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go through many of the videos yet, but hopefully you're able to use some projectiles. So
I was throwing underhand because I was doing it in my hall. And I think there was like a little bit of human error with mine because of the way I was throwing it and because I wasn't like giving it too much force. So 15 came out on top.
Oh, okay, interesting. So kind of like the forward release gave you the most.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't think about that. If underhand versus overhand, that might be an interesting aspect, something to change in this experiment, see if that makes a difference. Because I wonder if that changes the way the force is applied, also the way the ball spins when it's released could play a role. So interesting. But in terms of, distance, it kind of makes sense at 45, right? Because it's giving you an even distribution of forces applying both horizontally and vertically. In fact, in baseball, again, I know I keep talking about the pitcher, but batters, a really, really good hit, especially like a home run. Anyone know what angle batters tend to try to swing at to hit the ball at?
52.
Yeah, so it's close to 45, right? It's a little bit over that. And that's going to maximize that horizontal distance. They want to send it out of the park as much as they can. And so having an angle closer to that is a little bit better. So this is kind of just a silly demonstration of that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to take from this. The simulator. I know I kept promising we were done with the simulator, but if you set up those 3 angles, you hopefully got something like this. And again, this shows you that 45 definitely gives you the maximum horizontal distance. 75 is just too much in the vertical department, right? Not enough horizontal force, and 15 is the exact opposite. Falls to not enough vertical force to give it time to continue to travel that far. So I guess time-wise, the time would have been a little bit different here because they're not just falling straight from that position. So, okay, again, if you didn't finish that, that'll just roll into homework. The other homework is, as I said at the start of class, starting to think about your final Rube Goldberg machine. There is a survey on Canvas. It's linked right down here on the bottom, the final Rube Goldberg machine initial plan. It's just 2 questions. I want you to pick 4 of the 8 required tasks for your Rube Goldberg machine, and then think about what items you have in your home that you could set up permanently to achieve those. So it's almost sort of like an initial plan. The next thing we'll do is start thinking about how we can sew these together and how we can start building them so that they accurately work every single time. The 2 middle ones are just the classwork, so if you didn't finish those, that's homework. But the final thing is your spring midterm comments. Now, I know spring midterm grades already came out, but now we've released comments that are focused more on your transition into the remote learning and online learning experience. I've made a little video here on how to access those, but I'll just walk you through it right now as well, if you haven't done this already. Every teacher kind of did something, I think, a little bit different. You'll need to get into your Drive to access mine, and you do that just by going to your little waffle on your Google homepage and just click on Google Drive. And within Drive, you want to go to, I think it's Shared with Me. And there'll be a bunch of files in there, but what you're looking for are Google Docs that look like this. It'll be your last name, first name, and then this code, 523-4. And you should be able to open that document. In that document, you'll see some text from me. It'll be your current grade, a little paragraph from me about what's going well with you, maybe some areas that you need to, apply some attention, any missing work, how you can make that missing work up to improve your grade. And then final paragraph, I say to reflect and respond to this feedback, I have a link to another Google Doc, which you can edit. And here's an example of what it'll look like. It'll be 6 questions. And you need to answer these 6 questions directly in this doc. Just type right below them. You should be able to edit it. And it's just about, how accurate do you think my comment was? How have things been going in the class so far? What's worked well? What hasn't worked well? And so on. And to motivate you to do this, I am offering a 10-point assessment score for this. So this is basically 10 test points that you can get for completing this. If you don't do it, it'll be a 0. It's a silly 0. This is an easy way to boost your test score. So I encourage you to do that as homework for Thursday. All of that is listed on campus. Any questions on that? All right, kiddos, that is it for me. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'll hang around if anyone has any individual questions or concerns. Otherwise, have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.